If I'm the nominee, we're going to be the party of hardworking Americans who are doing what my parents did for us, doing everything possible to leave their children better off than themselves. And they're going to be the party of big government, more spending. And look how far to the left the Democratic Party has already moved. Look how far to the left Hillary Clinton has moved to become more like Bernie Sanders.
He is at the moment the only Republican presidential hopeful outside of Donald Trump and Ben Carson to crack double-digit support. He's been doing it quietly and with a distinct plan. Some even call him the most established establishment candidate on the right. And under the surface, you can hear the bubbling that Marco Rubio will be the man to beat at this time next year. All right, let us begin there with this edition then of the Political Animal. Rightly speaking, spokesperson for the Tea Party Leadership Fund PAC, Katrina Pierson. Leftly speaking, veteran Democratic strategist and former Deputy Staff Secretary to President Bill Clinton, David Goodfriend. I thank you both for joining us. And Katrina, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. A recent story came out and called Marco Rubio the best establishment candidate choice for the GOP. Wait a minute, aren't we right now in an era when people don't want establishment candidates? Wouldn't that be a negative against him?
Well, it's absolutely a negative against him, and he is the most established establishment considering Jeb Bush is dropping. That's why Marco Rubio is rising. And this is all going to center around immigration once again, so he is definitely the most establishment candidate running.
All right. Now, David, let me get this to you, because there recently was a story out by Ed Klein, the author, who talked about the fact that the Clintons want to destroy Marco Rubio, that he is the guy that they most fear. You buy that?
No, I think Marco Rubio has a flip-flopper problem. I mean, he makes John Kerry look like a block of granite. This is a guy who started off as part of the leading group of senators that were pushing for immigration reform. And then one of the only votes that he comes back to Washington to cast, the guy has missed work for most of this year, is on a bill regarding sanctuary cities, again, pushing against where he had been on immigration. And as for that coming home to vote, I mean, he claims that federal employees are lazy and should be fired. If he held himself to his own standard, he'd be fired. He hasn't shown up for work. So he's got a lot of vulnerabilities. I think Hillary Clinton would welcome a fight with him.
Hey, let me, Katrina, get to this one point here, because David just brought up the phrase in here, and we hear this a lot, flip-flopping. Left goes to right, right goes to left. Wait a minute. I'm going to play devil's advocate here. What if flip-flopping is merely just somebody getting a little bit older, becoming a little more intelligent, becoming a little more learned about what they're talking about, and then decides to change their stance simply because they learned something that they believe might be a better alternative? Gee, I know I'm making maybe a little too much sense for some people here, but isn't that just possible that that is what happens not just to Marco Rubio, but to others, and it's not necessarily flipping?
Well, I think that's what you see, Ed, with Ben Carson and Donald Trump and why they're leading. They are classic examples of what you just described. But that's the whole reason Rubio is a threat, is because everyone knows he's going to say what it takes to get elected and then flip-flop on the issue in favor of things like sanctuary cities and immigration. That's why he's a threat from the Democrat side.
But, and David, I'm going to follow up on this. Again, a follow-up a little bit on that. It seems to me that what Katrina's talking about is you flip simply because it becomes politically expedient, which we know no one would ever do who's running for office, of course. But well, then let's also bring in the fact that maybe some people are not being expedient. Maybe they just learn a different and a better way.
Well, I thought, Ed, in all honesty, I thought you were going to say like what Hillary Clinton said at the debate, because what you said about getting older and changing your views is precisely what she said at the debate. And I think there's a difference between refining your views and absolutely contradicting 100% what you just said. Let's take, for example, the issue of immigration. It was Marco Rubio who said it's going to be better for the economy and better for us culturally if we find a pathway to citizenship under an immigration reform. It's now Marco Rubio who says we have to do everything we can to get people out of the country who are not here legally.
Isn't it possible, though, he just learned a different way that he thinks is better for the country?
It certainly is possible, but if you ask how he's going to win Florida, Colorado, Nevada, places that are must-win states in a general election scenario with huge Latino populations, he has to answer as a Cuban American to Mexican Americans who feel very differently on that issue, and I think he's going to have a tough go of it, having made such a drastic change, not a refinement of views, but an absolute repudiation of his prior views. He will have difficulty with that in a general election.
Okay, fair on both sides here. I got about 90 seconds left. Katrina, to you. Donald Trump, the new poll is out, ABC News, Washington Post poll. Let's not even bother with the numbers. He's big. Ben Carson is big. Look, I know where you're coming from on this one, but honestly, are you really serious in saying to yourself, yes, I can see Donald Trump being sworn in and become president of these United States?
Well, I think you're hearing a lot of people say that now, even those that counted him out. Donald Trump is in his element now. He's sort of calming down that he's realized that he's actually in this race and people are taking him seriously. And the policies he's putting out are popular policies. People can get on board with this tax plan.
But is it enough to become president? Is it enough to become the leader of the greatest free country in the world?
Absolutely. When your philosophy is simply to make America great again by putting Americans first, it is absolutely possible.
David, why am I going to guess that on the left, you folks kind of eat that up immediately and love when somebody says that? Because I know that you can't see any way possible that Donald Trump could beat Hillary Clinton. I know that.
Oh, no, listen, I think Donald Trump should be taken seriously. Don't forget, a lot of people made fun of Ronald Reagan, a retired actor, from California. And look at what happened there. I mean, I think people are unwise to count out any candidate as somehow not capable of becoming president. I think Donald Trump is capable of winning the nomination for the Republican Party. I just think this comes down often to a math problem. And I mentioned the swing states. I'll mention some of them again. Ohio, Wisconsin, Colorado, Virginia, Florida. What we all are going to watch in a general election is about 1 million voters in a half dozen states make up their mind. And these are relatively middle-of-the-road folks. So I think it's going to be a contest, whoever is the nominee, a contest between ideas and between who really is with me. And I think that's going to be a very difficult line. Not impossible, but a difficult line.
I think that's a good point to talk about. Who is with me? Well put. We'll talk about that again. Katrina Pierson, David Goodfriend, thanks so much for joining us. Stay with us. The fastest 60 minutes of news, The Hard Line, continues.